Good evening, everybody, councillors, members of the public, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'd like to declare the ordinary council meeting of the 18th of May 2021 open. The time now is 6 p.m. We start, of course, by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. I ask everyone present this evening to turn off all electronic devices. That includes mobile phones, iPads and tablets for the duration of the meeting, especially, well, that's everybody in the room, please. We've had some terrible problems with the audio in recent months, and we're sure it's in relation to mobile devices, so if I could ask for your cooperation, it'd be greatly appreciated. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the audio recording shall be available on the city's website within 72 hours, but I'm pleased to say that often it's far earlier than that. The remainder of the disclaimer can be seen, Stacey, on the screen. Not quite at the moment. I'm sure we can push on. Attendance at item 2, attendances. Apologies, we have none. The full councillors here. Thank you, councillors. Item 2.2, approved leave of absence. There is none. Disclosures of interest. I'll get you to address item 3, declarations of interest.
Thank you, Mayor. I've received a declaration from Councillor Sarah Saberi in relation to EN 006-21 and EN 007-21 motions carried at AGM. It's an impartiality interest. The council's position, of course, as a councillor. The nature of the interest, impartial interest due to the roles as board member with the Swan River Trust. I've also received at the AB, but I'll repeat them here, a declaration of interest from Councillor Sweeney in relation to EN-008-21 loan funding of Wilderton Basketball Club. Councillor Sweeney declares a financial interest as he is an elected member and a member of the Wilderton Basketball Association. I have a declaration of interest from Mr. Stephen Kane. It's in relation to OC-004-21, appointment of interim CEO. The type of interest is financial. His position as an officer with the City of Canning, and Mr. Kane is an applicant for the position of CEO. Thank you, Mayor. That's all
Thank you, CEO. We move on to item 4, announcements by the presiding member. Without discussion, there are none. Reports of delegates without discussion. Does anyone wish to present a delegate report? None. Thank you very much. Question time for the public. Responses to previous questions taken on notice. There are none. At item 6.2, question time for the public. I open question time now at 6:03 p.m. The time set aside for question time is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. The City has first of all received written questions. I think tonight received questions for tonight's meeting from Mr. Steve Walker. Mr. Walker, if you're present, would you like to step forward? Thank you, Mr. Walker.
All right, thank you. Steve Walker, 22 Farnham Street, Bentley. All these questions regard 19 Brewer Road. Question 1, did City of Canning issue a development approval for a new firearm shooting range in a warehouse on 19 Brewer Road, Canning Vale on the 3rd of August 2017?
Director Bride.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
Question 2, were the 2017 City of Canning Council members aware of the change of use proposal and City of Canning approved decision in August 2017?
Did you say August 2015?
2017.
17. Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The decision was included in the exercise of delegated authority notification sent to elected members.
Thanks, Mr Walker. And your final question?
Question 3. What month, year, the City of Canning Ordinary Council meeting delegations register item transferred delegated approval to officer level that led to the July-August 2017 3-week approval process for that type of lethal recreation facility?
Director Bright, are you able to give an answer on that one?
Through Mr Mayor, yeah, the delegations are reviewed annually by Council and there are typically amendments made each year, and the decision was in line with the delegated authority in place at the time of the decision.
So 19th of June 2016, maybe page 55, 58, maybe.
Thanks, Mr Walker. I think we have Mr Robert Van der Reest here, wants to ask a question. Mr Van der Reest? Anyone else wish to ask a question? I've got Mr Gleeson with his hand up. Excuse me, just one moment. We'll just keep moving along with the meeting while staff discuss the next question. Mr Gleeson, did you want to step forward? You had a question? Did you have a question? Yeah. Okay, please step forward.
Oh, Mr Mayor, there seems to be a shortage of water. Is the budget pretty tight?
Is that your first question?
Yeah.
Okay, your second question, Mr Gleeson?
Oh, that's one, is it?
I'm not sure. What's your question?
All right, thank you. I'll actually need your help, Mr Mayor, with my questions, if you don't mind.
I need what?
Need your help? H-E-L-P.
Why would you need my help with your question?
Well, I just may.
I'm sure you probably don't, Mr Gleeson. You're an experienced former councillor, so I'd be very surprised. But go ahead.
22 years.
Yeah.
And 5 mayors.
Terrific.
So you could say that could be an authority on mayors.
Maybe you
Mr
are.
Mayor, did you question the elected members around this table regarding who spoke to the agency regarding the agency that was to choose the new CEO for the City of Canning?
I'll take that question on notice. Next question.
Why would you do that, Mr Mayor?
Because I don't have an answer for you at the moment. I can't recall.
But you did do it. Is that right or wrong?
Could you please move to your next question, or I'll rule you out of order and you can leave the meeting. So I'm happy to provide a written answer, but please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Did the City question the agency that was to select the new CEO and ask the question, who was the person that rang them?
I will take that question on notice.
Are you aware?
Sorry, I was just wondering who wrote the questions for you and whether you're having a problem reading them. Your third question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My question is, when you did ask the question of elected members,
I don't
did
think
you
I,
ask yourself?
I don't think I actually
did
told
you,
you that I
all
had.
right, question. Did you
Don't
ask
speak
yourself?
over me, Mr Gleeson, or you can sit down. Ask your question.
My question is, did you ask yourself, did you ring the agency regarding?
Did you say, did I ask myself?
Yeah, did you? I mean, you ask everybody else, but did you ask yourself?
I'll take that question on notice.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Mr Gleeson. Thanks for coming. Mr Van der Reest, I think you're in the room, are you now? Yes. Would you like to step forward? Thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thanks very much. My name's Robert Van der Reest. I'm at 13 Data Place in Queen's Park. Been a resident with the family probably for 65 years. Member of the Cannington Leisureplex the Cannington Leisureplex and a number of members for probably the last 18 months have emailed the council and some council members. The state of the City of Canning Leisureplex in Cannington is becoming to the point of a state of disrepair. We're concerned that the council does not have the funds to repair the problems at the City of Canning Leisureplex. And this is in light of, well, figures that we've been given of up to $250,000 on feasibility studies at the Shelley foreshore. So my question is to the council, to its members, to the administration, is the City of Canning moving towards insolvency, and therefore we can't do repairs at the City of Canning Leisureplex, which we've seen many highlighted problems over the past 2 years, 3 years.
Did you want, I'll just ask the question if you like. Mr Kane, you're in a position to answer that question, and we do prefer to take it on notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Technically, a level of government can never become insolvent. One thing the government has of all levels in Australia is the ability to raise taxation. So whilst you can raise taxation, you have a stream of income to be able to deal with any shortfall of income. That would not be, say, typically the situation with a private business. So the City of Canning is not insolvent. It adopted a new set of principles for its long-term financial plan last week, which will help fix all of its financial concerns. I know, Mr Vander East, my staff at Leisureplex has spoken to you a couple of times about the issues out there, and I'm happy to meet with you and on site one morning if you'd like.
Well, thanks very much for that. One of the Deputy Mayor did actually respond to one of our emails, and we seem to have got some repairs, but I'm concerned for the welfare of the jobs at City of Canning Leisureplex, not just for the members, but also for the staff as well. And they seem to be frustrated with the process, certainly over the last couple of years.
I'll just need a question from you, Mr Vander East. We can't have it's not a deputation or a debate.
No,
if you have
okay.
A question, we're happy to entertain it, but I need a question.
All right. Well, the question is hopefully that we can continue to do repairs on the place, as even the ceiling in the steam room fell on one of the members in the last 12 months. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along this evening. Anyone else have a question before we move on? Thank you. We'll move on. Public question time is now closed and the time is 6:12 p.m. Thank you very much. In regards to item 7 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes, we have a recommendation here that the minutes for the special council meeting held on the 25th of March 2021 at 7:30 be confirmed as circulated with the following changes. Councillor, let me see, that the mover and seconder, Councillor Barry, I think you have been talking to governance about this. The recommendation is that the mover and seconder for the substantive motion as amended for report OC 003 of 21, as shown on page 5 of the minutes, be changed to show that the item was actually moved by Councillor Porter and was seconded by Councillor Spencer Teo. That would be an accurate reflection on what occurred that night. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Councillor Barry, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Porter, that'll do. Thank you very much. Councillor Barry,
If I could just
go on.
just a couple of words, Mr Mayor. Yes, I did read what came back this afternoon from Director Kane. I would accede to the point that the first one may have been a question and a little confusing, and I suppose similarly number 2, but from the point of view, as I read the minutes, I didn't think they were accurate, and I think they needed clarification. I have that clarification. If this is what we're going to move, then I'm happy with that, but once again, I only ever seek clarity, and thank you for that.
Yep, no problem at all. Thank you. Councillors, if there's no one that wishes to speak against it, Councillor Porter, you have anything further to add on that? You happy with that?
Nothing to add, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, if there's no one that wishes to speak against it, let's just put the matter to the vote.
The motion to confirm the minutes from the SCM of the 25th of March 2021 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Councillors, thank you. We move to the minutes. At the next recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of April 2021 be confirmed as circulated. I need a mover and a seconder for that item, and then I believe that Councillor Sweeney has an amendment. Mover will be Councillor Barry. A seconder will be Councillor Bain. Councillor Barry, before I move to Councillor Sweeney, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Well, I suppose not until necessarily I can't vote really on it until Councillor Sweeney puts forward what he's got. I mean, I wasn't aware of that, but nevertheless, if that's sufficient.
We're going to move to an amendment in a moment, so you'll have an opportunity to speak on it if you like.
All right.
Councillor Bain, have you got anything you'd like to add before?
Nothing further to add at this moment, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, thank you. Governance, I'll get you to put that recommendation up. Councillor Sweeney, I think you've been working with governance on this, and the amendment is on the board, but I'll just get you in your own words for the sake of the recording. You wish to move an amendment in relation to the accuracy of the item, is that right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do, if I can. I did put forward something through to government this afternoon. I only just picked this up.
I'll just get you to move the amendment, and we need it to be seconded before you can speak.
Okay.
You're moving an amendment?
I am moving an amendment.
And that's the amendment on the board.
And the amendment is it's up on the screen now.
Terrific. Can I have a seconder for that then?
With the following changes, okay? So it's not
It says amendment in here, so I'll just change that. It's actually under 4.6 in the standing orders. I think it's 4.6. It's just actually a motion, so you're actually moving a motion to amend those. You've actually complied with 4.6 by providing the wording prior to the meeting, which has been done, as Councillor Barry had done. So I have no issue with that at all. So you've moved the motion. We need a seconder. The seconder will be Councillor Holland. Councillor Holland?
I've got a question first, Mr. Mayor. I don't see how anyone can second this motion without having the time to read it. We can't even read that. It's not the whole motion. We need time to read it before. This is the first we've seen of it. So at least we could have it up on the whole screen, please.
Absolutely.
And a bit of time to read it.
Can we change the size of the view on the screen so we can see the whole motion on the screen? Councillors, have you read that? That's it. We just need somebody to second it. That's it. It's just about the accuracy of the minutes. Councillor Sweeney has got an issue with it, so he's asked just for it to be amended, which we're proposing to do. Councillor Holland is the seconder, governance, for the matter. Councillor Sweeney, did you want to speak just quickly on that matter? You can only speak to the accuracy of the minutes. It's not for you to debate whether or not something should be done, or you could have said this, or about the merits of it. It's just to talk about the accuracy of the record.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just will speak very briefly. This, councillors, is just about a person's name appearing in the minutes. I did not say this person's name, and by having the person's name in there, it does create a degree of difficult for me, so I would rather have it taken out. I understand that the minutes are not verbatim. They don't have to be, I understand that, but I think that it should reflect some sort of accuracy when you listen to those tapes. It should be in the writing of those minutes. It should reflect the accuracy of what is on the audio of those tapes. So I would ask, as I've put down here, that that councillor's name is removed for the reasons that I didn't mention that councillor's name.
And I think I think that is true. I think we've reviewed the tape, but in any case, that's the motion by Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Holland, you got anything you'd like to add before we put the matter to the vote?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's very straightforward. Yeah, the minutes should reflect what was said, and that wasn't said. Therefore, the minutes should reflect that, most definitely. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, councillors. Can we put the matter to the vote?
The motion to confirm the minutes of the OCM of the 20th of April 2021 with changes has been carried 10 in favour, 1 against, with Councillor Spencer Teo voting against the motion.
Thank you. The next recommendation relates to the special council meeting held on the 3rd of May. The recommendation being that the minutes of the special council meeting held on that date be confirmed as circulated. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bain, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Barry, thank you. Can we put the matter to the vote? And just for the record, I just wanted to advise councillors that the minutes for the special council meeting on the 10th of May have not yet been circulated and therefore are not presented at this meeting for confirmation.
The motion to confirm the minutes of the SCM 3rd of May 2021 has been carried unanimously.
Thank you. The matter has been carried unanimously. We move to item 8, which are petitions. At 8.1, there are none. At item 8.2, presentations, there are none. At item 8.3, we have a number of deputations, the first of which, Sian Mawson. Sian, can I ask you to step forward? A deputation has been approved for Sian Mawson regarding the local biodiversity strategy. Sian, as you know, you have 10 minutes. Please just introduce yourself and we'll get going.
Now, may I ask if we have a controller for the PowerPoint, please?
Stacey, can I just get you to assist with that, if you wouldn't mind? Deputy Mayor, I'll get you to ask you to sit down, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sian. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening. My name is Sian Mawson and I'm from the Friends of Queen's Park Bushland. Tonight I want to talk to you about the city's local biodiversity strategy. But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the representatives of other Canning environmental groups who are sitting in the gallery this evening to show their support for what I have to say. The local biodiversity strategy has the vision that, over the next 20 years, the diversity of Indigenous species and ecosystems is conserved, resilient to threats, restored and valued by the local community. This is proposed to happen through 5 key objectives, one of which being to increase the viability and resilience of natural areas by establishing buffers and ecological linkages considering the impacts of climate change. This key objective has 3 targets to be achieved by the year 2033, one of which is revegetate at least 250 hectares of degraded or cleared land using local species to increase the native vegetation cover in the city to at least 10% of its area. In taking the initiative to compile it, the administration recognised a local biodiversity strategy as an important document to create. The strategy was then presented to and unanimously endorsed by the Council on the 19th of June 2018, suggesting that Council also thought it to be an important document. However, I note that over the last year or so we have seen the city dispose of some of its land holdings. I am concerned that, if land continues to be sold, the city won't be able to meet the objective of the local biodiversity strategy to revegetate at least 250 hectares of degraded or cleared land. The local biodiversity strategy feeds into the city's urban forest strategy, as do the street tree and public open space strategies and the city's tree-related policies. All of these documents speak of the need to retain existing trees and to increase the amount of vegetation in the city. The urban forest strategy tells us that increasing the amount of vegetation in the city is not only beneficial to native wildlife, but it is beneficial to the community. Increasing the amount of vegetation reduces the urban heat island effect, thereby reducing energy costs. Vegetation has health benefits by removing pollution from the atmosphere. A tree-lined street increases property values, and attractive urban forests are a key element in attracting consumers to shopping precincts. I understand the desire to earn some quick cash and pay down debt, but we need to look at what we stand to lose in the process. To be a welcoming and thriving community, we need trees, and to have trees, we need land to plant them on. The funds received from the sale of land can be used once, and then it is gone forever. But retaining and revegetating that same land brings a lasting benefit to the environment and the community. Please, don't sell our land. The future health and well-being of this city depends upon it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for making the time. Thank you, Sian. Deputation has been approved by Mr. Robert Sewin. Mr. Sewin, would you like to step forward, please? You have 10 minutes, and it's in regards to the Swan River. Thank you. I'll just get the microphone turned on for you, Mr. Sewin. Sorry, the staff will take you.
I've got it now. Thank you. My name's Robert Duncan Sewin. I'm 40 Central Road, Rossmoyne, one of your local justices of the peace. Mayor Patrick Hall, my property at 40 Central Road, Rossmoyne, is impacted by the council's 25,000 dwellings infill yield probability. I have stated I'm conscious of your role on council, and councillors, I have given deference to the responsibility you attach to yourselves as officers of the City of Canning Council, but I am appalled with the extent of most of your non-responses to my request to meet and communicate in the decision process affecting the electors' AGM motion EN 00721. I have conveyed to you my concerns about the validity of your officer recommendation detail inclusive to consultation para 1 to 37, but I'm more specifically distressed with the officer para 38 comment recommendation to you in that should council determine to support the motion from the annual general meeting electors 25th of March, council's decision to endorse the adopted master plan would need to be revisited, and a new master plan would be required to be prepared to reflect the concept proposal of the motion. The development of the endorsed Shelley master plan included an in-depth and lengthy community engagement process, wherein the minute evidence is definitive in Community November 2018 petition containing 1,844 signatures update to paragraph 105, where it directed Councillor Cruz and Councillor Spencer Teo to support the Living Stream Master Plan Cafe Restaurant to community consultation. Specifically, that Council was to include the establishment of a cafe restaurant within the Shelley Beach Park precinct at a location to be through community consultation. Mr. Mayor and councillors, faced with your leadership responsibility and interest of electors, ratepayers and residents paramount in your decision making, how can you not, as council officers, propose to reduce the housing infill, net loss of public open space, and appease the community stress levels and the anger evoked with the ecological impost of the increased foreshore catchment drainage runoff within the next 5 years, without taking it to your resident community as consultation for their sanction as applied to progressing Council's invitation for submissions on the proposed new local Planning Draft LP16 Public Open Space Contribution Policy. Mr Mayor, 25,000 infill dwellings, absolute ness of public park and reserve land, public open space with 4 or 5 hectares of depleted reserve recreation park development control area simply laying useless and inactive under the magnificent asset Regional River Park Shelley Waters and just awaiting the City of Canning Councillors' kiss of reclamation. Thank you for your opportunity of deputation.
Thank you very much, Mr Sewell. A deputation has been approved also for Mr Ian Ross regarding item CO 004 of 21, which relates to the Canning Community Men's Shed funding support for lease extension. Mr Ross, are you already stepping forward? Hi Ian, how are you? Thanks for coming along. You have 10 minutes in which to make your deputation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you and to give you a brief update on the progress of the Canning Community Men's Shed. The shed has lost a year of its planned progress, having been ordered by the state government to shut our doors for several months last year and a couple of other shorter shutdowns. After being allowed to reopen, because of our demographics, we experienced several months of light attendance, as several of our shedders are still concerned with the vulnerability of catching COVID. We believe it will take us a minimum of 2 years or more to have plans drawn up, approved and the building built, given the building trades and material shortages currently being experienced. Plus, we need to seek additional private funding apart from Lottery West funding, which we are hopeful of securing to finance the building. The leadership team is making steady and focused progress towards our goal of the Forever Shed on the land made available to us by the city. The shed had a successful awareness, recruitment and fundraising stall at the recent Wilton Rotary Community Fair, a further stall at the Market City Sunday Markets, plus an awareness and recruitment presence at the city's recent Volunteer Pathways Expo at the Riverton Library. The shed has also received many commissions to manufacture, prepare and repair wood products. We now have a presence on Google Maps, an active Facebook page promoting the shed and the sale of the products, and we are updating our website following attendance at a recent city-run digital marketing workshop. We've always had a steady stream of new members joining the shed. However, since March this year, this has increased on average to 1 new member every week. We believe the increase in members is testimony to the growing need for a larger facility to enable men to have a multi-purpose facility where they can gather. The health benefits of this are being emphasised regularly. Our catchment area is mainly from the Willetton, Canning Vale, Bull Creek and surrounding areas. So since October last year, we have managed to achieve a bank balance in excess of $15,000 after managing the day-to-day running costs of the shed. $10,000 of this has been quarantined towards the renewal of the lease of our current premises. We have constructed a basic scale model of our proposed share premises for consultation and recommendation purposes. We believe that a multi-purpose, multi-user building with an increased membership of about 100, the building will be fully self-sustainable. In consultation with the Australian Men's Sheds Association, the Men's Sheds of WA and other sheds, we are well on our way in preparing a comprehensive business plan focused on inclusiveness, respect, dignity and fellowship that allow us to present it to potential funding agencies. Mr Mayor, councillors, Canning Community Men's Shed has proved its effectiveness in providing support to the growing number of individuals and agencies. We are confident that the council's investment in the shed will continue to be stability and health of the community and the success of our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Ross. The next deputation has been approved for Mr Tony Cleary regarding item CC 022 of 21, that item being the proposed sale of lot 11430 Vulcan Road, Canning Vale. Thank you, Mr Cleary. I'll just get you to introduce yourself, and you've got up to 10 minutes if you'd like to make your deputation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, members of the public. I appreciate the opportunity to take your time again this evening, and we did learn quite a bit from being here last week, and hopefully we have we do have something more to add than what we presented last week. I'd like to just touch our background and current situation, but then look at our need of the property of lot 114 Vulcan Road in Canning Vale. And then particularly try to emphasise the value that the Assembly in Perth brings to the City of Canning, and the commitment that we have to the city. Our current situation, as I did say last week, we feel is very positive. The Assembly of Perth is a church registered not-for-profit charity with the ACNC. We were registered in the year 2000, and at that time we had an average attendance of 20. Over the last 20 years, we've increased the average attendance to over 200, with a casual attendance of over 300. Our situation, from our perspective, is positive not only due to the increase in number over a number of years, but also the fact that those attending are many young families, young people, and children. So we see a bright future and great possibility to continue to increase. Our target is to reach a regular attendance of 400 by the year 2030. We meet in 3 places in Perth. One in the north, we use facilities in Churchlands High School. We have a meeting hall in Bentley, and then we also use facilities at Rossmoyne Senior High School. But really we've outgrown our meeting hall in Bentley, and actually for some years we've been looking for a suitable property for expansion. Our estimate is approximately 60% of those attending live in the City of Canning, with a number in Canning Vale, but a large majority live south of the river, and particularly in the city. So to have a site in the City of Canning is of great value to us. And I'll come to it again, but of course a site close to the highway that's easily accessible is also very valuable to us. I won't get into the details of the services that we provide, as I did speak to that last week. But what we didn't speak to last week was the value to the City of Canning. And while I appreciate, I don't speak to this as an expert, and I don't bring a dollar value to the value, but I would like to point you to, I guess, the social capital that we bring. Although, of course, we have many activities where we meet together physically, but actually our goal is to have 70% of our activity in the homes of those who attend our meetings. So socially, we have the goal of being together very much in the homes and cooperating together in that way. If I can just lean on a study by Fuller Seminary that was reported in 2011, it pointed to the healthy development of young people being greatly affected by having 5 meaningful and integrated relationships with those of differing age groups other than their parents or their direct, I guess, youth leaders or supervisors. In that way, I mean, personally, as with 2 high schoolers in Willetton High School, I'm particularly touched by that study, and that reflects something of our goal of having attendees from all ages be together, not just separated in different levels. So we see that as valuable to the upbringing and development of our youth. Then we also see that as valuable to older ones that attend our services and activities in being able to contribute to something beyond their own self-interest, which surely I can rely on the council appreciating the value of that in terms of purpose and meaning. In terms of the property itself, as I mentioned, we've looked for a number of years for a potential property for upsizing without success. I guess anyway, the difficulties that we've typically run into is that a site may not already have approval as a place of worship. Then as we look into those kind of difficulties, typically parking for numbers becomes a difficulty, and then the noise of our activity can become a barrier to the neighbourhood. So for these reasons, the lot 114 on Vulcan Road, we really ticks the boxes for us. In terms of noise, we surely won't be noisier than the highway, and there's no residential in that area anyway. There's plenty of car parking with easement and setback, and of course, as I've mentioned, there's the accessibility from major roads, and also public transport is greatly appreciated from our perspective. In terms of what we've managed to add, I'm sorry, it looks like we may have the slideshow from last week. Yesterday I sent through a slideshow probably at 4:45, which also had some drawings, which was our upgrade. Is it possible to... Okay, sorry, we don't have it available. All right. All right, I'm sorry. We had there's a concept drawing of the building. I guess to speak to that, we were not looking at a traditional church building, but something that would would bring value to the area. So something that would fit in with the area. Sorry, there was actually a number of slides. One, the kind of conceptual drawing, then the placing of what we would hope to be a first building as a first stage for our meeting. So I guess speaking to that, we have some detail on the drawing there. So two large 250 square metre meeting places, about 10 multi-use rooms, kitchen dining area, outdoor area, garden and playground, and then plenty of parking, obviously. Our hope and our vision for that whole lot would be we'd utilise it all over time. We would first build a building at least so we can meet, which would meet our current need, and would also allow us to enlarge the scope of our activity. Then we would look at a second stage where we'd develop probably recreational sports kind of facility. So with badminton or basketball or some kind of building that could contain something like that. Thirdly, we'd be expecting to develop the whole lot in terms of some garden area. We certainly don't have the view that it would just be the buildings and parking lot. So we like to bring value and some contribution to the area there. Something that would contribute to the streetscape in view of Roe Highway, and that something would be pleasant to those even working in the area. Sorry if I just pause, just without the slides. I think just the last thing that I just mentioned, and it's a little out of order, we've had our eyes on this property actually since before COVID, and our interest was peaked in it towards the end of 2019. At the beginning of 2020, we started to liquefy assets in view of purchasing it. Then with the onset of COVID, we didn't take any action just because of the instability of the situation and not knowing how things would develop. So it's at this time that we come back to this matter and seek the Council's consideration. Thanks so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr Cleary, for coming along. The last deputation will be from Mr Steve Walker. That's regarding OC 004 of 21, the appointment of the interim Chief Executive Officer. Mr Walker, you got my email late this afternoon?
I didn't get your email. No.
What a shame. Okay, we'll see how we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Walker.
Thank you,
Would you like to
Mayor.
introduce yourself? And you've got up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Walker, Farnham Street, Bentley. It's deputation on the late item 0C 004-21, appointment of interim Chief Executive Officer, and it also is listed as a confidential item. When will City of Canning ever be an economically efficient, revenue-generating, responsible local government authority? When? The answer might be, possibly, when the council members collectively vote for good decisions, for good directions, for long-term fixes, especially when they are overdue. Yet many on Canning City Council look only to the short-term gain and medium-term gain. Yep, also many City of Canning highly paid staff also look to the short-term gain or medium-term gain. There is always an element of selfishness in this context regarding short-term gain, medium-term gain. Some don't want to talk out loud of it. Look, I'm not being paid to be here tonight. I'm not in receipt of City of Canning food allowances or fuel subsidies or off-site lavish dinner functions. Now, as I could have told council members any time in 2020, it is stupid to change Chief Executive Officer in the middle of a pandemic. 2021 has further shown that. Now, I realise 4 council members knew that. Yet, I appeal to the dissenting voters of October 2020, item CC 059-20, to look past their own egos and personal own goals and allow a motion for the current Chief Executive Officer to be allowed to stay on at the very least another 9 months or 12 months. That is past the appointment of a new Chief Executive Officer. That will allow no rush, further mistakes in a seemingly current, confused start-stop process. One day, off in the future, when City of Canning Council members finally choose a new Chief Executive Officer, I don't think it would be fair to immediately expect them to be available within a few weeks. Would it not be better for a future new Chief Executive Officer to spend time themselves preparing for their new role, rather than showing up, taking a huge paycheck, nodding along for the first 2 months while they learn the City of Canning brand, identity, culture? Now, the public still hasn't heard from any council members what constitutes a good, better or great CEO for the City of Canning Local Government Authority. There are doubts the public will ever hear at the end of the process. Heck, the process might be reasonably expected to drag on into 2022. Why rush if you're going to stuff it up? The last thing the public wants is a rushed decision prior to the October 2021 local government elections, merely so candidates for any position can publicise themselves to the media. Finally, it was a difficult decision for citizens from City of Canning to swallow in October 2020, and worse still, the announcements of stuff-ups in April, May 2021. Others will of course give commentary of reputational damage of City of Canning to surrounding local governments, to wider metro local governments in Perth Metropolitan, to the business community. Yet that all pales in comparison to the anger, frustration, disappointment of City of Canning citizens who have watched and experienced at least 2 decades of stuff-ups by the organisation and council on the matter. If history repeats, we will have more
Mr.
bad
Walker,
news to stomach.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh, okay, finished. Thanks very much. If you'd got my email today, it said, Steve, because you asked, please don't interrupt me. I tried not to, but you're walking a fine line. My email just said, take a breath, relax, and be respectful. I know you're trying very hard, but you walked a very fine line. Thank you, Mr. Walker. We got there in the end. At item 9, application for leave of absence, councillors, we have none this evening. At item 10, questions by members which due notice has been given, there are none. Items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public, there are none. Reports of committee meetings, there are none. Reports. The first report is from the Office of the CEO. There are no reports from the Office of the CEO. Item 13.2, the first report we'll be dealing with this evening is CC 017 of 21, the live streaming of council and committee meetings. Director Stephen Kane is the responsible officer for that item. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Can I have a mover for that item, please?
Live stream.
We'll let the matter lapse then. We move on. I don't understand what's going on. Why haven't you moved them? Why hasn't anybody moved this motion? Councillor,
I would like to move that item.
I've actually made a ruling. I actually stopped, paused, called, and the audio will say that the matter lapsed. I called for a mover. I didn't have a mover. I looked around the room. No one moved the item. I then moved the item to lapse. The item is lapsed. We move on.
How can it lapse? Because is there a particular timing, Mr. Mayor, to be given?
As soon as I make a ruling, if nobody puts their hand up and moves the motion, if the motion is not moved, it lapses. I've made a ruling.
But
I'm sorry, Councillor, I've made a ruling. I've expressed the ruling to the audio.
It cannot be.
It can be.
That
It can be
that
brought
way,
back.
Mr.
It can
Mayor.
be brought back.
No, I'm not sure how it could be done because
Councillor,
what is
we
the
move
time?
on.
What is the time limit of the moving the item? Because we have had this number
Councillor, I'm
of
not going to
times.
argue with you. I've made a ruling under the standing orders. We move on to CC 018 of 21. The item has lapsed. We move on to deed of variation to Lease Rostrata Family Centre.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, I'm not going to ask you again. If you actually keep interrupting me, I will call you to order. I have ruled on the matter and we have moved on. We're now on CC 01821, and that is the deed of variation to Lease Rostrata Family Centre. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 15 of the agenda and is on the screen now. And again, I'll call for a mover. Councillor Ponaturai is the mover for that matter. Thank you. Can I
No,
have a seconder?
I'm still on the asking on the
Councillor
standing order
Ponaturai, but
10.9, Mr. Mayor, with due respect.
Thank you. You can't call a point of order. Did you move this item or not? I've asked you to move.
I
Are
put
you
my
moving
hand
the
up.
item?
Yeah,
Thank you.
not
I'm
Rostrata
asking
Family
for a
Centre. I was
seconder.
talking
Councillor
about
Holland.
the live stream.
I'm not going to have you arguing over top of me, Councillor Ponaturai. I'm calling you to order. Councillor Holland, you're the seconder. Councillor Ponaturai, I'd like to speak to this item, which is the deed of variation to lease.
Anyone's allowed to move to 10.9 at any time after a decision is made, if they want to. They're allowed to do that. That's what the motion is about, the point of order is about.
I haven't had anybody actually raise 10.9 until Councillor Ponaturai raised her hand to actually move the motion. I called for a mover for this motion.
Councillor Ponaturai just mentioned 10.9 just then.
Councillor Ponaturai, I actually specifically asked, I read the recommendation, I referred to where it was in the agenda, and I asked for a councillor to move the item. Councillor Ponaturai put her hand up, I put her as the mover, you then raised your hand, I put you as the seconder. I then went to Councillor Ponaturai to speak on the matter. Councillor Ponaturai then at that stage moved to rescind a decision that I had made on an earlier item. My view is, and I'll refer to the direction of governance, is the meeting has already moved on. So if you don't raise that matter immediately to rescind that motion, the meeting has moved on, Councillor. So my view of that, and I might just pause for a moment until I catch up. Councillor Ponaturo, my job here is to make sure that these meetings are orderly and to make sure that good governance occurs. But at the end of the day, we're here for the good of the residents. I'm going to allow you a motion. But councillors, this is a really good lesson to everybody here. When I call for a matter to be moved, somebody needs to either move it or the matter lapses. That's the standing order. So, Councillor Ponaturo, you can look left and right looking for people to... I'm not sure why you're looking left and right, look at me quizzically, but at the end of the day, I looked at every council member and called for somebody to move the motion. Nobody did. So people need to be aware of what's going on. Councillor Barry, yes. Just your microphone.
Just a question, please. And I don't know. I'll just assume there's either going to be Councillor Ponaturo is either going to was or is going to move an amendment or an alternate motion.
That's fine. What we're going to do is actually we're going to move on. I will rule on 10.9, which is in relation to the ruling of the presiding mayor, and I think we'll deal with that first. We'll then go back to I will call the matter again. If Councillor Ponaturo then wants to move that motion, I'm okay with it. We'll move on from there. And if Councillor Ponaturo then wishes to move an amendment or a foreshadowed motion or whatever she would choose to do, we'll deal with those one at a time.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's in the best interest. Thank you.
I agree. Councillor Ponaturo, just give me just one moment just while I read through this. So I'll need to get you, you've actually moved a motion. I'll accept that you did actually move a motion. That's under section 10.9 of the standing orders, just for the sake of the public gallery. That's a motion, it's a procedural motion that the ruling of the presiding member be disagreed with. That can be, on reflection, be made at any time, so I'll allow that to occur. I will need somebody to obviously second that. Just a seconder. Councillor Porter is the seconder for that, and we'll put that matter to the vote. I don't think there's any need to. I'm even going to support it. I don't think there'll be an issue with it. If you want to speak to a Councillor Ponaturo, you can, but I'm going to support the rescission motion myself, so I've got no issue with it. With the dissent motion. Let's move on. Let's put it to the vote then. We're voting on the motion that the ruling of the presiding member be disagreed with, so that we can go back to the motion. No, you hadn't done it.
The procedural motion 10.1E that the presiding member's ruling be disagreed with has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. I'll call again for the, this is a CC 017 of 21, live streaming of council and committee meetings. The recommendation is on the screen, or it soon will be. It's also on page 5 of the agenda for tonight. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Ponaturo, we got there. And a seconder? Councillor Porter, thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Councillor Ponaturo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With due respect, I will be speaking against the officer recommendation. I've sent a foreshadow motion. So I just wanted to clarify that we are dealing with the officer recommendation now, and I'm speaking against, and then we'll come back to the foreshadow motion. And thank you so much for bringing this item back. I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So your foreshadowed motion is?
I've just sent to the CEO and to the, I sent to the electronic copy. I've sent it. Stacey as well. Thank you. Yes. The email sent to CEO Director Kane.
Just one moment, we're just trying to retrieve it and then we'll bring it up on the screen and we'll make sure that you're happy with what's on the screen.
I've turned my phone off, Councillor, so it doesn't interfere.
Just for the sake of the recording and for the people in the public gallery, we've just got the governance team just bringing up the foreshadowed motion that's apparently been sent by Councillor Ponaturo, and once we get that up on the screen, we'll proceed. Councillors, I'll draw your attention to the screens in the room. Councillor Ponatoro has is proposing a foreshadowed motion, which is now on the screen. I'll just get you to read through that.
Requires an absolute majority.
Councillor Ponaturo, I'll get you to speak against the motion then, if you'd like to start us off while councillors are reading through the foreshadowed motion.
Okay, just quick clarification. So do I get to speak twice?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, through you, Mr Mayor, whether 3, the gates, because it says does not introduce audio and video, it clashes, it contradicts 1. I mean, I'm not sure whether 3...
That wasn't mine.
So number 3 is not you?
No.
So I don't know whether that's...
It's only 1 and 2, is it, Councillor Ponaturo, on the screen? It's only point 1. It's only 1 and 2.
Okay. Shall we read what exactly I sent it, Mr. Mayor?
Don't. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just read the foreshadow motion. Introduces audio and video live streaming of agenda briefings, council meetings and committee meetings, where such as part of the meetings are A, not confidential and or B, closed to the public, for the reasons of contained in this report by August 2021, funding being made available in the 21-22 annual budget. That's number 1. Number 2, approves the inclusion of funding up to 45,000 in the budget, draft budget 21-22, to facilitate the introduction of the audio and video live streaming of agenda briefings, council meetings and committee meetings, with conditions as clause A and B, and to be implemented by first week of August 2021. But right now, the CEO just indicated to me the first week can be too hard, but the maximum I would change that to by the last week of August 2021. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's a foreshadowed motion, so you're speaking against the motion. Did you want to speak?
Can I just clarify? So
you get to close. You still get to close debate. You've moved the matter, so you're speaking against this. That's right. But since
I'm
you moved
speaking
it,
against the recommendation
that's
first.
right. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Councillor Swain, you got a question?
Yeah, I just got one question. On item 2, I think we need to put in there facilitate the introduction of audio and video live streaming.
Yeah, that's
let's just deal with the motion we have in front of us at the moment. So you have the foreshadowed motion. You've read it. You've provided it. You're happy with it. Now you've been asked to speak to the substantive motion, and you're actually moved it, and you're wishing to speak against it. So I'll ask you to do that now. Thank you.
And then we'll come back to the foreshadowed motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, yeah, if in case, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. When I proposed this notice of motion, that City of Canning live stream of audio video its council and committee meetings, my concern was to increase transparency and accountability in its decision making on the part of the council. Canning is a smart city. Canning is a welcoming and thriving city. I would like to remind you all of my colleagues, Council and Mr. Mayor, Local Government Act Review delivering for Community 2020. In 27, the McGowan government announced a review of the Local Government Act 95. This is the most significant and comprehensive reform of local government legislation conducted in more than 2 decades. The objective is for Western Australia to have a new, modern act that empowers local governments to better deliver for the community. The vision is for local governments to be agile, smart and inclusive. I would like to share that the state government final report goes on to say, number 55, as a minimum, audio recordings of public parts of council meetings should be available and on the local government's website when the minutes become available, with live streaming to be encouraged, while webcasting live streaming of council meetings was preferred. Elected members have a duty to properly present the people of Canning and to ensure that the ratepayers are kept well informed of the council's decisions. Other local government authorities have been live streaming for some time, and I see this is the way of the future, particularly so because of the precautions that have to be taken because of the pandemic situation now. On reading officer recommendation, with all respect, I note first a concern with the cost and second with the possibility of litigation against councillors because of their speech and behaviour in council meetings. In turning to cost, we have been provided with costings from our current provider. However, I have not received a reply to my request of 12th of April to find out the amounts paid by other councils to implementing live streaming. In the initial office report, sum of 15 to 20,000, and it's now risen to 42,000. I do note that now we have a full-time photographer, so visual imaging is obviously important to provide the services for us. We already have audio recordings of meetings. These recordings are publicly available within 48 hours of the relevant council meeting. I ask, these recordings are being edited? If they are not, they carry similar risks to those outlined by the administration in respect of the video recordings. As far as I'm aware, there has not yet been any litigation against an elected member or a member of the administration arising from any audio recordings. It would appear that the report officer has formed a view of live streaming of the video live streaming will result in more people paying attention to council's deliberations and thus being offended. In other words, live streaming is likely to increase ratepayer involvement with an interest in the council. I ask whether the behaviour of councillors and members of the administration in council session, is it so bad as to need to be hidden away? If it is, we should all be ashamed of ourselves and question whether we should be here. We should all be able to avoid defaming others in our deliberations, as well as to refrain from infringing copyright and intellectual property rights. Simple courtesy goes on a long way. Perhaps live streaming is a good way to be, video live streaming is a good way to be improved perceived poor behaviour on the part of the participant, not just the audio. Confidential matters will be still dealt with behind closed doors as the present, so they should not be a concern. I would also respectfully ask Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors to carefully consider this recommendation, officer recommendation, and to vote in accordance with the recommendation of the State Government Local Government Act Review Final Report 2020. Live streaming is the way to go in the modern local government world and in the pandemic situation, and we want to be still the thriving and welcoming and smart city of Canning in Western Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Porter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually talk in support of this one because I do prefer audio only just because it's much cheaper. I also support this item in general just because the other councils I've spoken to have had a lot more interest in their items when it's live streaming, just because a lot of people lose interest to actually go in depth into the meeting once it's just a report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll just jump in just very quickly, councillors, just to say, look, I agree with the recommendation. I think it's a wonderful compromise. I applaud Councillor Ponaturi for bringing this forward, but it's been before council before. I think Deputy Mayor Christine Cunningham raised this a few years ago, and we considered it at that stage. Now probably the time has changed, and it's time for us to revisit it. But I think, do you know what? If we start with the audio, it gives us a chance to quantify those numbers, measure. Is there a demand for people to want to actually see the video of us as well? But I agree with Councillor Porter. There's a real call out there for these meetings to be the audio to be live. So I think if we obtain the evidence from first moving to audio first, see who or what or how many people are actually using the facility. That provides us with then some evidence, a measurement, which allows us to support a business case for perhaps transitioning to live streaming video from audio at some future stage. So I really do believe this is a sensible compromise and a really large step forward for us. But I agree totally, we really don't at this stage, people don't need to see our faces, but I think it's important that people hear our voices live. So I think we should just test it, see how we go, and then maybe consider spending all of that extra money at some stage down the track. So anyone else would like to speak on this matter? Councillor Kunza?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I speak in favour of the officer recommendation. As I said previously when we debated the notice of motion, we previously considered that. I guess all the potential options, and council decided just to put the recordings up, as has been commented by Councillor Ponaturi. Since, I guess, COVID demonstrated on how we actually need to provide measures that people can, I guess, live stream and see council when it's happening if they, for whatever reason, can't come to council. But I guess I'll speak now, I guess, against video, because that's part of the officer recommendation. Just simply because, I guess, the costs involved, it's already been mentioned by Councillor Porter and the Mayor. But just, I guess, in the current, I guess, climate, I mean, we're pushing back capital projects. I mean, the last few months we've been going through our long-term financial plan. We're pushing back capital projects and just focusing on renewal just from a financial point of view. The director has basically pointed out that the City of Canning is going to do a complete replace the system in these council chambers in 22-23, which is why he actually recommends waiting for the video to actually encompass it all together. Why would we be looking at having a budget item of $45,000 in this financial climate to provide video when we can, at a far cheaper option, provide audio? With respect to how, I guess, open and transparent we are, I think we actually are very open and transparent. Can you believe there's actually local governments out there that don't even record how councillors vote? I mean, for years now, we have put up our recordings online. People have been able to go on our website and listen to debate and, I guess, try to find out why councillors have voted certain ways. To date, it hasn't really been taken up the way we foresaw when we made the decision several years ago. I mean, a lot of those meetings aren't really listened to, but I hope that with the capacity to live stream it, that people will take that up, that opportunity, which is why I now support this. And as I think it's always great when people open their minds to changing, and this is one where I have. But I just don't see the argument for putting in video at this point in time, especially when, as I said before, this whole room is about to go through a transformation with regard to the technology in the 22-23 year, and I just don't think it's the financial climate to be expending $45,000 on something when when we're delaying other projects.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'll speak against the officer's recommendation, and the first point I'd make is that $45,000 is not a sum of money to be sneezed at. I appreciate that, but I think later in the evening we're going to be asked to be giving a sum of money somewhere near at least 4 or 5 times that amount. Essentially, I know this is Councillor Ponaturi's motion, and for me, in going through it, there's a number of things. The risk analysis, options 1, 2 or 3, which is audio, audio live, audio video live. There's a risk analysis, and the risk is exactly the same for everybody. I mean, we're all supposed to be mature adults. As has been said before, I think of the AB, there has not been a complaint made against councillors for any disclosures, etc., etc. I mean, it says in 19 that the Local Government Act and the regulations do not cover it, but it is becoming more common practice for local governments to make available use of live streaming. Now, we can wait, or we can get on the bandwagon. Really, I mean, it's a simple matter for me. The city over the last 18 months has been promoting itself as the smart city, and we're going to have all this paraphernalia up on Cecil Avenue. It tells you the time of the day, how many car parks, what the weather's like. Well, I think it's imperative that we as a council allow the people to see the operations in this room and how the decisions are made. And I think that's better made by viewing it and hearing it live than just audio. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, look, I'm for audio and video because, councillors, I don't want to settle just for the norm. I don't want to settle for the norm of transparency or the norm of accountability. As councillors, I think we owe it to our community to strive for higher standards of transparency and higher standards of accountability, and we should be doing that every time we come into this room. So, you know, councillors, for me, I don't think we can have various levels of transparency or various levels of accountability. We are either transparent and accountable, or we are not. The officer's recommendation talks about risk and public scrutiny and the ongoing public scrutiny. Well, for me, why don't we want that? Why is that something that we need to run away from or hide? I think that should challenge us, and I think the more public scrutiny, the better council will be, and far better councillors we will be. So that doesn't scare me at all. In item 11, the availability of these recordings gives a degree of openness, transparency and accountability. Again, here lies the problem with what the city says in item 11 in the recommendation. We can't have degrees of accountability. We can't have various levels. We are either accountable and transparent, or we're not. I think it's a marvellous thing, and it's full credit to the council for bringing it forward. I think it's certainly a way where we can boost our reach. And in these times right now, I think it's really important that we increase our fan base, and what better way to do this? As far as cost concerned, well, you know, we will budget for that and we will afford it. But I think, you know, it's something that certainly does have to happen. The audio and video also supports one of our key corporate strategies to be a smart city in technology, and the whole purpose of this strategy is to deliver social benefits to our community on key principles, to grow, to build, to prosper and to lead. Well, if you choose one or two, we won't be growing very much, we won't be building, we won't be prospering, and we most definitely won't be leading. It's just more of the same. And as I said in my opening, I don't want to be the same, and I certainly don't want to be like other councils. We should be setting our sights a lot higher. We should be leading the charge. I want to be a council that other councils look up to, that other councils are envious and want to follow the standards that we put out there for our community, because after all, isn't that what our community expects? So, live streaming is the future. It's groundbreaking, and it shouldn't be seen as something that we're afraid of or highlight where we stuff up. It should be seen as a major positive to market everything that we do right. If we put the events of the past week aside for a moment, there is a lot to like about the City of Canning. And unfortunately, I think since I've been here, we just don't market that very well. We don't sell ourselves very well, and this is the perfect platform for us to improve that. We are all professional people in this room, and this is a golden opportunity for us to demonstrate that throughout the community And I just don't know why anybody in the room would not want to do that. So, councillors, I would strongly urge all councillors to support audio and video streaming. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Sabiri, I'll go to you first, and then I'll go to Councillor Spencer Teo beside you. Councillor Sabiri.
Thank you. I did come to meeting, and when I came, my thoughts were to support the officer recommendation, but I've listened to a bit of the debates around the room, and I think it would be good to also include video and audio, video as well as audio live streaming. In general, live streaming, I think, apart from increasing transparency, also makes meetings more accessible to residents who are interested in the political process. And I think adding video to that would possibly mean that we'd have to actually be more diligent in the way we behave in the council, whether it's sitting straight or slouching. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to also include audio, video to the audio, and I guess going forward, I also hope that we can sort of start supporting, not at this stage, but in the future, support methods that residents can actually attend and ask questions or make presentations via video, and because in some cases, some residents wouldn't be able to afford the time to take leave from work, and especially people in, I guess, less flexible jobs or people with disabilities or key workers. That way they could actually participate more regularly if they wanted to. So, yeah, I do in general support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Seeing as everybody else is talking on both methods, I may as well do the same. To be completely honest, I've never really liked this, and with the $45,000 price tag, I like it even less. I think our priorities are a little bit muddled here. So we want state-of-the-art technology to live stream video live stream council meetings for at best 20 viewers. I even have to question these figures. Are these 20 individual viewers, or are these 3 or 4 people tuning in several times throughout a meeting, sitting and waiting for those 1 or 2 items that may be of interest? What's so urgent about decisions made here that we need to spend tens of thousands of dollars upgrading a system that's, okay, it's old, I'll give you that, but it's not broken? We've had one person attend council to speak on this. There's no demand for it. Our meetings are at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing on a Tuesday night when I'm not here at 6 o'clock, and probably like most other people with young families are doing. I'm sitting down having dinner with my family. I'm talking about what happened at school that day, at work that day. We're conversing about tomorrow's events. After that, we sit down and we go watch Lego Masters. For those who don't have kids, or for even those that do, who work full time, well, they're just getting home from a long day of work. If a screen's going to be turned on, I'd be putting my money on that they're going to be watching the news, The Drum, shortly followed by MasterChef, Home and Away, Big Brother, or even Antiques Roadshow. I'm sorry, but these shows have a far more wider appeal to a wider range of demographic than our council meetings. What happens when or if we move downstairs again? We take this video stuff with us? No, we're probably just going to go back to what works, and that's the audio. Audio means you can listen like a podcast. You can clean your house, walk your dog, exercise, drive your car. You've got pre-recorded. That means you can skip to the bits that aren't of interest and get straight to the point. You can't do any of this sitting in front of a screen. I'm all for transparency, and clearly it's needed in this council right now, but audio serves that purpose just fine, in my opinion. This is not the time to be spending tens of thousands of ratepayers' money on something that is not needed. Live streaming should be one of the lowest priorities on this council's list. It's a luxury. It's something that's not necessary. Yeah, it's nice to have, but we don't have budget surpluses or millions of dollars in reserves like other councils who have this already in place. To me, this is something when you get when you have everything else taken care of, and we are far from getting to that stage. I go back to priorities. Last month we had a group of residents in here presenting a petition with over 300 verified signatures begging us for some kind of digital technology so they could feel safe in their own homes and neighbourhoods. Now here we are proposing state-of-the-art technology to a small handful of people. What's that saying to the people of Bentley? We deserve the best of the best so people can view our meetings from home while you sit there with outdated digital technology fearing for your safety? Yeah, no thanks. Our ratepayers and their safety need to be our priority, not this, not now. If our ratepayers can't have technology to feel safe, why should we have technology to broadcast our meetings live? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to speak in favour of this, what I see up here. And I've just written my points. I've listened to both sides. I'll just quickly go through my points. I think I'm happy that we've gone to recording. I think that we need to go to live audio and then reassess 22, 23, whether we go to video. I think we need to crawl before we walk. I couldn't really get apart. I looked at the report and those numbers that some of those councillors are using are very, very low usage. And so I'm thinking that, you know, $8,000, between $8,000 and $45,000, let's just see how it goes. Let's get used to the system. I'm aspirational council. I'd like to do this eventually, but I think we need to walk before we, or crawl before we walk, and then walk, after we walk, we start running. So costs for me is a bit of an issue. There's also, I think, a certain weight to the element that, you know, when we do a refurnishment, this will all sort of work in together. And also, I have to consider a political risk element. I think we just need to get used to the live audio. I'm sure some of us would be easier to get used to it than others. And then, because we have to also protect the Canning brand, and so that's one of my thinking to support this particular motion as I see it. And point 3, we look at it again, reviewing the position in financial year 2022 to 2023. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Audio live streaming will enhance accountability and transparency and make council meetings more accessible for the public. I note that the recommendation includes a commitment to reviewing the possibility of introducing video live streaming in 22-23. I think it best to revisit the possibility of video live streaming then, when we are on a sure financial footing. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else before I ask Councillor... Oh, sorry, Councillor Holland, go ahead.
Got a question at the moment,
Yeah,
Mr
of course.
Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we vote this down, for one of us better expression, so then the other motion comes into play, right? So what happens if that gets voted down? Then we've got nothing, is that correct? Absolutely
Then we have
nothing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right.
Status quo.
Councillor Polonturoi, did you want to close debate and then we'll see how we go?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I would like to, in summary, I would like to mention that a number of you thought about the costing because the report is written such a way, and the reason I came up with the 45,000, that was replied to my email. The question I asked the director, Steve Kane, whether for him to actually get in touch with number of councils and Town of Windsor and Vic Park, and number of them who are fantastic example how they have done and how did the costing go with them. For example, I would like to make sure here that, so obviously because this costing was reported 15 to 25,000 and the email sent to us on Friday was $42,000.
You
so,
just, sorry, June.
Yeah, I'm going coming to, yeah,
no,
why the...
You can only rebut what has been said. So you're introducing a whole range of new information and new evidence. So you didn't introduce that previously.
Why the costing is looking at 45,000?
Yeah, but you can only rebut what has been said. That's rebuttal. So this is not a new opportunity to speak on it again.
Okay.
You just rebut what has been said.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the audio video are real time. And I don't know how many of you actually listened. If the Premier or the Chief of Health Staff or someone else said about the COVID-19 update, it was in audio. I would like to see how many of the people, Western Australians, would have listened to the audio recording and will be staying safe. Right now, we are the best in the world. So I would like to know how many of you do that. And next time you tell me whether you listen to an audio, you prefer the video when they come around real time. And real time data is very, very important. Yes, we moved from 2017, this notice of motion, to 21. As Mr. Mayor said, yes, we are in 21st century. We are in a smart city and we want to be a champion always. So we can't be looking back what we did in 2017. I looked at the 2017 report from the office recommendation. Same risk was written and it was copied and pasted here. And I wanted to just to bring that to everyone's information here. And on the 10th of May, we actually discussed, and Mayor said cost is irrelevant as far as when anything comes to transparency and accountability in this council, and which is fantastic. And I believe that. In my undergraduate, master's, all my studies, I've done ethics and governance. That is very important. We don't go for cheaper option because it's not because cheaper we implement something. We are the first tier of the local government in the Western Australia, and we are the number 3 in the position in the contributing economically to the Western Australian economy. And for example, Councillor Kunza mentioned saying that we are pushing the capex and this is this transparency is vital, but it's 45,000. I said it is up to $45,000. So I never said it's 45, it's up to. So it can be from anytime from 10,000 to 45,000. So I would like to repeat that to all of you. For example, Town of Windsor does the Zoom meeting in a live streaming. That costs really nothing to have the licenses. So my question wasn't answered by any of the email. So obviously this recommendation is slightly misleading most of you who are worried about the costing. The transparency is the most important. So live streaming encourages youth and new families to watch us as well. And Councillor Barry correctly said about the risk analysis was same anyway. And also thank you so much for the Councillor Sweeney. We owe to our community the highest standard, not just something less. And when we are the first year of the council. So increasing the transparency and social benefits are very, very important. And we often talk about access and inclusiveness. So this is something we need to be doing and we need to be thinking. That was a part of the report. Councillor Spencer here mentioned that to increase the viewers. So we need to be active in the society. We need to be active in the community and encourage more people to be viewing and getting involved. I talk to lots of people in the youth and I encourage them. They say, oh, we can't come because we got netball or basketball game. Or if we are at the dinner table, we might be happy to discuss this with our parents and talk about it. Or a number of young families in this city of Canning, we have 94,000 people. So we're not expecting 20 people to be watching this. And the constituents should know what we do. I thought this is what, I think the last week, I remember Councillor Spencer Chair mentioned, that I only wish if the constituent knows how we behave, and they will be choosing the right people in the council to become a councillor or Mr. Mayor or Mr. or Mrs. Mayor, whomever the mayor positions and all of this. That is why it is important. They sitting at home should be watching how much we are contributing, how do we behave, how well we are transparent. And also it's not about, we also saved quite a lot of money in the last 2 years. Cost saving we have done in conference and interstate travel and international travels. We are saving cost in the clothing allowances. We are saving cost in citizenship ceremony. A number of items we have been saving heaps of money. So we are doing the right thing, but when it comes to governance, transparency and accountability, we should be thinking, and it is not 45,000, it is up to 45,000. So when the budget is done, I think the director and myself will work together. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. So please consider how you vote. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillors will put the matter to the vote. Thank you. You're voting, this is the officer's recommendation on the board.
Motion CC-017-21 has been carried. 7 in favour, 4 against. Those voting against are Councillors Barry, Holland, Ponathurai and Sweeney.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to CC-018 of 21, deed of variation to lease Rostrata Family Centre. I did actually call this earlier and I had Councillor Ponathurai moved it and I had Councillor Holland seconded it. Councillor Ponathurai, did you want to say anything in regards to the Rostrata Family Centre?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the Rostrada Family Centre, and they're very active, the most active community centre I have come across in City of Canning. They've got 31 user group and maximising the property, and also very diverse cultural people using that. I think it's good bringing the diversity into the Canning, so I think we should support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would most definitely speak in favour of this. This is one of the best family centres that I've ever come across anywhere. They've got a great committee. They've got great people working for them. They've got, well, I think just Councillor Punathora say 31 groups that attend it. They want to expand. They've got the full support of the Department of Communities. They've got the full support of the government, which was shown, what was that, not last Saturday, the Saturday before, when they had, 3 ministers there. They even had an ex-premier there who actually opened it originally 30 years ago. It's part of the Rostrada fabric, it's part of the Willetton fabric, but it's not just limited to people in Willetton or Rostrada either. Anyone can become one of those members of one of those groups. I think this is a fabulous thing, and I would urge everybody to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Does anyone wish to speak against it before they put the matter to the vote? Anyone need to speak? Thank you, councillors. We might just put the matter to the vote. Thank you, Councillor Ponaturo, and thank you, Councillor Holland.
Motion CC-018-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We'll move to CC 019 of 21. The title of that report is the proposed road closures, portion of Layla Street Road Reserve and portion of Road Reserve within Queen's Park Open Space. The officer's recommendation is on the screen, and it is also on page 24 of this evening's agenda. Do I have a mover for that item, please? Councillor Bain, you'll be the mover. Councillor Barry. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation and look forward to the completion of the Layla Street streetscape upgrade. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry, anything to add?
Ditto, thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against it before we put the matter to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-019-21 has been carried 10 in favour, noting that Councillor Holland was absent for the vote.
Thank you, Governors. We move to CC 021 of 21, the title of that report being Monthly Financial Report of April 2021. Officer's recommendation is on the screen and also appears, the recommendation also appears on page 33 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? A mover. Councillor Kunza, thank you. A seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Kunza, have you got anything you'd like to say?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Ponaturo.
I just have a simple question.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director Kane. What is the expenditures or the cost is allocated for the citizenship ceremony, and what is spent today? Thank you.
Director Kane, are you able to answer that tonight, or would you like to take that
No, I won't be able to. I'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Take that on notice, Councillor. Thanks for your question. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Just in relation to the tenders, in the agenda briefing and the OCM agenda, we have a total of nearly $3.8 million in tenders. Now, I'm just wondering, given what we've been told is the parlous state of our finances, I'm just wondering, and in view of the rationalisation, particularly in tender for 2 rubbish trucks at $743,000, I'm just wondering, is there a reason why we may not have been able to put that off for a year or so? Or is it desperately needed?
Director Kane.
I'll get Director Bowe to comment specifically on the vehicles.
Sorry about that.
Just if I note, Mr Mayor, that the tender determination noted that these were within the allocation of our budget. A considerable effort goes in the asset management planning to determine that we only exchange items when they're near the end of their lives. Director Bowe did raise this issue with me a while ago, and we had looked extensively at the fleet, but he may wish to comment specifically on the two vehicles.
Director Bowe.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, if I could just ask for clarification from Councillor Barry, what page are you looking at? I'm looking at
Can you
are you
provide
talking
a
about the
reference
tenders
on the,
awarded
on the, are
under
you talking about the
delegation?
warrant list or?
Page 57 and page 70 of the OCM.
Just your microphone, sorry.
Sorry. Page 70 of the OCM and page 57 of the agenda briefing.
Page 70.
So on the agenda briefing, number 2, tender details, excuse me.
Councillor, Director Kane, are you able to help Director Bowe locating that item? Can you? Councillor Holland, you're looking perplexed. Can you just, do you want to pass that to governance and I'll pass it up to me so you don't cross the floor? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 70 of my OCM agenda, I have details of 3 tenders awarded under delegated authority. Willetton Library, application of fertilisers and additives, and modular construction and installation of Rostrata Kindergarten.
Are they the ones you're speaking
Maybe
to?
we can take it offline.
They are the ones?
They are, but in the agenda briefing you have 743,000 for 2 single.
Just your microphone, Councillor. You have to start again because we won't have heard a word of that on the recording.
I mean, it just struck me as odd that they were different from the agenda briefing to the OCM, where we've got 743,000 for 2 single operators. Green waste processing at 445. Interbranch courier services at 138. Shelley Beach repair to metal members 255. I thought that had already been done, but nevertheless. And consultancy service for data extraction and migration analysis for 275. And like I said, it comes to a total of $3.8 million.
I'm just wondering, it might be easier considering we've got a number of directors involved to perhaps formulate a response.
I'm happy to take that question on notice, Mr Mayor. I don't have the agenda
Okay,
briefing
Councillor
agenda
Barry,
in
we'll get
front
back
of
to you on
me,
that.
and I'm
Councillor
happy
Barry
to,
will take the matter on notice.
As long as the answer is given to all elected members, thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, thank you very much. If there is no one speaking against this matter, Councillor Kunz, there's no need to rebuff. We will put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
Motion CC-021-21 has been carried 10 in favour, noting Councillor Porter was out of the room for the vote.
Thank you, councillors. We move to item CC-024 of 21, the title of that report being Proposed Land Purchase of Water Corporation Assets and Easement for City-Owned East Cannington Reserve. The officer's recommendation is on the screen, also appears on page 74 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that matter? I've got the Deputy Mayor moving it. Second will be Councillor Barry. Deputy Mayor.
Commend the efforts of staff. I think this is an excellent mutually beneficial agreement with Watercorp. I can see some real benefits to not only the property in Queen's Park but also the Seven Oaks Street property. I think it's good, it's win-win. Also, East Cannington Reserve is also prone to flooding, and so I think that the arrangement there with Watercorp makes a lot of sense for us and just for simply park users that would like to use it when it's not soggy or mushy or flooded. So I don't want to say too much. I just think it's great, and I hope that with our contacts in we've established with the Water Corp, that we can perhaps look into other areas that we could do similar things, because I think this is, I see good things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry.
Yes, no, I speak in support of it too, Mr Mayor, particularly for the people of Bentley in relation to the Ashburton, Lot 40 and 41 Queen Street, and also particularly for the acquisition of Lot 27 Oak Street. That was one that was put forward many years ago, and we were at that time, and I presume we will be in the future, going to fill that in and put in one of the tanks underground like we did in Marquis Street, and that will be a very valuable property in years to come. So I speak in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak or speak against it before we put the matter to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put this one to the vote.
Motion CC-024-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13.3. The Director of Canning Development, Mr Graham Bright, is a responsible officer for this report. It's CD 015 of 21, the title being Motion Carried at the Annual General Meeting of Electors held on the 25th of March 2021, being authority to make decisions on building applications. The officer's recommendation is on the screen and also appears on page 87 of tonight's agenda. Do I have a mover, please, for that motion? Councillor Sweeney. A seconder? Councillor Spencer Teo. Councillor Sweeney?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Spencer Teo, the motion is that we note the motion. Sorry, mental blank. Go ahead.
Thank you. I support the officer's recommendation. If we as a council do anything but, we'll be essentially enabling social media and residents to dictate what their neighbours can and can't build, irrespective of the R codes. This subdivision is not a 12-bedroom, 12-toilet home. It doesn't seem to matter how many times certain people are told it's not sinking in. This application had one variation to the R code, and that being the front wall of the property was slightly outside the allowable height. Ironically, on the 1st of July, these codes are changing, and had this application been lodged then, the whole application would have sailed through our planning department, and neither us nor the neighbours would have even known anything about it. This variation to the R code has no effect whatsoever to any adjoining properties, as the wall in question faces the street. Do we want these types of issues before us month after month? Do we want to encourage residents or resident groups to circulate incorrect information, incite hysteria into the community, and encourage people to complain about the size of houses being built? Whether they comply with the R codes or not, staff are perfectly capable and they're able to make decisions based on fact, rational thinking and law. The emotion is completely removed. Residents coming to council dictating the design of their neighbours' homes is not something this council should support. Let's avoid having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at SAT to defend unwinnable cases and try not to fix a system that's broken. If we don't support the officer recommendation, it would set an incredibly dangerous precedent, and these meetings will be filled with neighbourly disputes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spencer Teo. Anyone else? Councillor Holland, yes, of course.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I speak in favour of this, but I also say that residents have got the right to come in here and make a deputation.
Yeah, of course.
They have got the right to go around and garner support if that's what they want, and they have got the right to use social media. They've got the right to do whatever they want. If they want to get their opinion across, it doesn't mean we agree with it, or the council agrees with it, or the Department of Planning agrees with it, but they've got every right to do that, and they should be encouraged on it. It's not flippant, it's not disrespectful or anything like that. They've got every right to do this.
Fine. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else before we put the matter to the vote? Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CD-015-21 has been carried, 10 in favour, 1 against. Councillor Ponithoro voting against the motion.
Sorry, I was on the wrong page there. Thank you. We move to item 13.4. The Director of Canning Environment is responsible for this report, Mr Warren Bowe. It is EN 006 of 21. The title being motion carried at the annual general meeting of electors 25 March 2021. Improved playground facilities at Shelley Beach Park. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Oh, sorry. Councillor Sabiri, can I get you just to read to the meeting? You've made a declaration of disclosure. Have you got that in front of you there?
No, I remember. It's an impartiality interest due to my board membership with the Swan River Trust.
Okay, thank you. I'll just get governance. My fault, Councillor. I should have got you to read it before we started. Happy with that? Is that what it says? Yeah, happy with that. Thank you very much, Councillor Sabiri. Can I have a mover, please, for this item? Mover, Councillor Sabiri. Councillor Sabiri. A seconder? Councillor Barry. Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Sabiri.
Nothing to add.
Thank you, Councillor Barry.
Nothing further to add, but I think we might as well add the same argument that was just put forward for the previous motion to this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, if no one wishes to speak against it, we might just put this matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion EN-006-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to EN 007 of 21, title being motion carried at the annual general meeting of electors held on the 25th of March 2021, reinstatement and restoration of land at Shelley Beach. Councillor Sabiri, your declaration extends to this one as well. Terrific. So the declaration made by Councillor Sabiri, the disclosure in relation to impartiality that she read to the meeting a short time ago, applies equally to this item. Thank you, Councillor. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Councillor Kunze, you want to move it? Sorry, the recommendation is also on page 109 of the agenda. The mover is Councillor Kunze. Seconder, please. Seconder, Councillor Holland. Thank you. Councillor Holland. Councillor Kunze.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I speak in favour of the officer recommendation, though I do want to propose a few amendments, which I've sent earlier to the governance team.
I think we might have them here. I just turned the page and I can see them. Governors, can I ask that those be, they're on the screen now? Councillor, I'll just get you to perhaps just make sure that the amendments that are on the screen are consistent with what you have actually provided to staff and that you're happy with those amendments.
So it goes on. So basically, as it says, point 2, remove that last bit regarding specifically that no reinstatement or restoration enabling a lagoon link drain sedge at Canning location 1859 reserve be undertaken. And then
okay, and you also had items additional 4 to 7 on there as well?
Yep.
Governors, can I get you to move those up the screen so Council can at least see those?
So with point 4, it's that request the Chief Executive Officer to engage the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, Swan River Trust and Water Corporation to request a review of the drainage system, bacteria levels and erosions of riverbank at Shelley Beach Park, Reserve 26292, in accordance with Objective 2 of the Swan Canning River Protection Strategy. 5 notes the Rossmoyne and Shelley are both deficient in public open space and that the City of Canning is investigating measures to increase or improve the POS in these 2 suburbs. Number 6, request the Chief Executive Officer to investigate the feasibility and report to Council on the potential costs associated with the restoration and reinstatement of the riverbank on the above mentioned reserve. And 7, request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council at the October 2021 Council meeting on potential improvements and strategies to alleviate the increasing levels of bacteria and erosion on the riverbank and potential measures to increase pods in the Shelley and Rossmoyne area.
Thank you. I need a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Spencer-Teo is a seconder. Councillor Kunze, I'll ask you to speak to the amendment, please.
Yep. So For those who are unaware, Mr. Sewin, who's come to several council meetings, has done a phenomenal amount of work in researching this issue for a number of years now. Robert has a certain way of presenting, but to be concise, he has two specific aims. The first of all, he wants to look at ways to increase the amount of public open space in Rossmoyne and Shelley, as they are deficient. Our own strategies show that. In fact, he's been leading the charge trying to prevent the city from selling the land outside Shelley Primary School in 2014 for this exact reason. Unfortunately, he failed with the commissioners in place. His second main point is that he wants the water quality of the river to be improved so that he may immerse himself at Shelley Beach Park in the water by his 100th birthday, something he feels he can't do at the moment. Now, whilst Robert's made a number of comments throughout this period, I'm not calling for the dredging of the river. I don't actually think that would happen in today's world. I would like to know once and for all what the feasibility from an economical and an environmental point of view would be to some sort of reclamation. Mr. Sewin has thought out of the box. He's met with DBCA officials, Swan River Trust officials, City of Canning staff. He's met with several councillors, including myself, to explore this issue, and I believe it's worth investigating. His electors' motion, had issues because I don't necessarily believe that we should be bang on saying that we're going to do it. I just want to know, I guess, the feasibility of what he proposes. The city is currently, as we know, investigating a development contribution scheme for public open space in Rossmoyne and Shelley, and also, it escapes me, Bentley and St James. But I don't believe the fund should go towards, I guess, improving public open space. I mean, that's why people pay rates. I think it should go towards funding more public open space. So that could potentially be a funding model depending on what these reports would provide. It's the environmental challenges that would be most problematic in my eyes, and so I think it needs some sort of investigation. It might get to the point where it's just flat out not possible, but I guess when, to my mind, and I believe to Mr. Sewin's mind, he wants to actually see that, I guess, evidence. But more than that, with respect to this amendment, I'd like to know more about the nutrient levels. I mean, I saw analysis a few years ago of all the open drains down there and how we may alleviate the nutrients going in and improve the river's water quality. What is being done and what further measures can be implemented to deal with erosion, nutrient levels and improve water quality? Now, I commend city staff and CREPA and environmental groups for the measures they've been taken to address this. The Rossmoyne Shelley Foreshore Management Plan obviously takes that into consideration. And so Canning is already taking steps, but I'd like to know through what Mr. Sewin's provided, through, I guess, this model, what may be able to be done. And so I ask you for support. It's not supporting any, I guess, measure. It's basically asking for the meetings to take place and some feedback to be provided as I've put it in the motion. I'd welcome your support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, have you got anything to add?
Yes, I do. Mr. Sewin, as you can tell, is incredibly passionate and knowledgeable about the area of Rossmoyne and Shelley. He's been a resident for well over 50 years and he's seen the area change significantly in that time. Infill has had a huge impact on our parks and reserves and also our river system. He's absolutely correct in that we have a responsibility. However, how can we do our jobs when we don't know if the other government departments are doing theirs? This amendment, if anything, is going to start a conversation. We've got an obligation under our own Shelley Rossmoyne Foreshore Management Plan to find ways to improve the water quality system at Shelley Beach. Item 3.3.4 of the management plan speaks of the Canning Waterways not meeting its water quality targets, which has resulted in 2 major harmful algal blooms. Each week, the Health Department test and publicise the results of the water quality at Shelley Beach. It's very rare that these tests come back with a good or fair result. Most times they come back with results that are very vague or incomplete, and every now and again we get warnings advising us not to consume shellfish caught in the river due to health risks. Our own management plan even states that given swimming occurs at the foreshore, there are opportunities to improve the water quality from stormwater outlets, and this should be considered. All that we're asking here is that a report come to us, inform us of what's been done, what is being done, or what will be done to improve this. I'm not sure everyone understands just how much impact the Water Corp drains have on the water quality at Shelley Beach Park. Drains located throughout Canning and some parts of Melville all flow into the Shelley-Rossmoyne River areas. Another major issue is erosion. Again, our own foreshore management plan states that both Shelley Beach Park amenities and the Sailing Club are at significant risk of damage from water level rising due to erosion. Again, we should be asking what's happened to mitigate this, what is happening, or what will happen to protect the city assets along the foreshore. There's no denying that there's a lack of public open space in Shelley and Rossmoyne, and I do see some merit in increasing the public open space on the foreshore, as it's the only option right now, other than having all these tiny little land parcels the size of average homes scattered throughout these suburbs with limited or no play equipment to make up for the shortfall. This is not a solution where, at least if we can have the information and feasibility study, we can see whether or not increasing public open space in Shelley Beach Park will in fact provide a solution to all these 4 issues, being 1, water quality, 2, drainage issue, 3, erosion, and 4, lack of public open space. Therefore, councillors, please support this amendment so we can further educate ourselves on these incredibly important environmental impacts to our waterways. This isn't asking for the river to be dredged, it's merely asking for what we can do, what are we going to do, and how can we improve the systems currently in place to future-proof our foreshore for all the residents of Canning to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Anyone else want to say a word or two? Councillor Ponaturai? I'll come to Councillor
Thank you,
Bain,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
Just
Barry.
through you to Director Wright or to Director Moore. Just want to know, part of the feasibility study, do you know roughly what's the estimate is going to be, the cost? Thank you.
Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't, Councillor Ponathurai. We have no budget provision in the draft 2021-22 budget for this exercise, and yes.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Ponaturai, yes.
Do you think that must have been, that is quite important and relevant to this item, the cost of it? Thank you.
I don't think we can, I don't think you can ask for opinion whether he thinks it's important. I think, Councillor, you asked for an opinion from the Director. He can't give an opinion. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A quick question. Will the local environmental groups be consulted as part of this process? Thank you.
Just in relation to the proposed amendment, Director, I imagine that you've got limited knowledge of it, but would we normally consult with the local groups, some of whom were here earlier this evening, I believe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fairness to Councillor Kunze, he did forward through a copy of the proposed amendment this afternoon. The engagement, as I read it, is requested to be with the DBCA, the Swan River Trust and Water Corporation. Subsequent to any engagement and feedback from those agencies, it would be wise, I think, to ensure that we engage with our partnering environmental groups that work for us in that space and do a great job along the foreshore as it is.
Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support the motion and believe it to be environmentally and socially responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to move a minor amendment, if I can, in 4, that it would read something on the lines where the drainage system, all drainage outlets, it's
Just which line is that? A third line, yep.
Yeah, so we've asked the Chief Executive Officer to engage with the department on that, and just all drainage outlets into the Canning within the city. And we can
What I'll do is I'll just ask governance to type it up, and then we'll refer it to Councillor Kunze, and then I'll decide on whether or not it is a minor amendment, and then yep. We're just getting it typed up as you speak, so did you want to run by that again, Councillor Barry? Just word
so
by
just
word?
all drainage outlets into the Canning River within the city, and probably when you get to erosion, you can put in particular the Shelley Beach Reserve.
Sorry, so where it says and erosion of the riverbank,
Yeah,
it already says
in particular.
in particular.
Yeah.
Councillor Kunz, I would rule that to be a minor amendment. I mean, it's just semantics, it's just words. I don't see any issue unless you do.
No, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Barry, Councillor Kunz is happy with that?
Yep.
So that would be adopted as part of the amendment?
Okay, and
Has to be the second as well.
Oh, sorry. I apologise. Well done, Councillor Holland. These meetings would go so much better if you were up here. I mean that sincerely sometimes. Councillor Spencer Teo?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Spencer Teo.
One other question through you, Mr Mayor, to Director Bowe. In 6, request the Chief Executive Officer investigate the feasibility report on potential costs associated with the restoration and reinstatement of the riverbank on the above-mentioned reserve. My understanding is that we are already spending, is it $100,000 a year revegetating the sedges and that along that river from, I think it's
Director Bowe.
Bridge to Yagan?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We are spending a significant amount of money in accordance with the city's endorsed Shelley Ross Moyne Foreshore Management Plan, and part of that work is to undertake the revegetation along the foreshore. Councillor Barry, yes.
So I'm just wondering whether 6 then is surplus to requirement, because we're already doing it.
Councillor Bowe, your view on... Councillor Bowe. Director Bowe, your view on that? Councillor Barry's wondering whether it's necessary to have
Mr Mayor,
item 6
I
there.
think item 6 actually refers to the proposed reinstatement or reclamation, as is proposed by Mr Suwan, and was passed as a motion at the general meeting of electors. My reading of part 6 was to really investigate that element of the proposal, not necessarily whether the city is already undertaking revegetation across the broader Shelley Ross Moyne foreshore.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiri, yes.
Sorry, I really can't support this amendment. To start with, this starting it, I guess, with reclamation, filling in the river to have more public open space while we're talking about problems with nutrients and erosion. I guess information about nutrients and what goes in the river, there's already a lot of information out there. The Department of Biodiversity, DBCA, also as Councillor Teo mentioned, Spencer Teo mentioned, Department of Health, they already do a lot of, they already analyze this information. They look at the water quality and the amount of nutrients in there. And talking about erosion, I guess the city is already doing, our environment team is already doing stuff to help abate erosion. And it's interesting because actually the residents who are who live there really not supportive of, sometimes can be unsupportive of what the city's environment team does. I used to volunteer with the bush crew and have been down there and actually done planting and planting sedges and other things, just to, and setting up different, I guess, barriers to make sure erosion lessens. But residents there have not liked what the city's team was, environment team was doing, decided to pull out the sedges, and I guess these were the things that the city's already doing, and I'm assuming, and to my understanding, is already in place and still continues to be in place, even though there's some opposition to it. In regards to what we can do with more information about nutrients, there's already a lot of information there that tells us what we have to do moving forward. So just don't see the point of having another feasibility study carried out by the officers. Really, there's already information of what to do out there. It can be implemented, if anything, and followed. Yeah, just sorry, Ben, can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, councillors, before I ask Councillor Kunz just to close? Councillor Kunz, I'll ask you just to close debate on your amendment. And just on the amendment, please.
Yeah, just to cover a few points that were raised. I guess with respect to concerns of local residents, I mean, the ironic thing is so many of those residents actually living on reclaimed land as it is. I mean, so much of Shelley exists because it's reclaimed. The fact that in the 60s the City of Canning got a dredge out there and reclaimed lots of the land. Mr Sewin, I guess his concerns over the years has been that a lot of what is now Shelley Beach Park has eroded. Now, staff commented on the fact that that erosion, because of city action, has been mitigated largely. But he wanted to explore what would happen in terms of a suburb that has minimal public open space if we reclaimed what we lost. Now, this Canning River is no longer actually perceived as a river by the department. It's perceived more as an estuary because there's lack of flow and that causes problems in that area. The question being asked is not, let's make a decision now whether or not it can be, whether it's right to reclaim it. It's basically to put an answer to Mr Sewin's long, I guess, crusade to see whether or not it's feasible. I'm not looking for massive amounts of money to be spent on this. I deliberately didn't ask for a feasibility study to be done by an independent person or anything like that. I just wanted staff to investigate the feasibility of it. That is, Mr Sewin has had discussions with DBCA over many years. They've said, oh, well, we'd need a proposal by Canning. He meets with Canning staff, I understand it. They said, well, that's not a focus of the city at the moment. He's basically stuck in no man's land. So I'm just asking for your support to, I guess, ask the question and see what would be provided. There are areas along the river that have been reclaimed recently. I mean, look at East Perth, the riverfront project there. Look at around the Burswood Casino, the Perth Stadium. The reality is it's happened recently. I just want to, I guess, to help Mr Sewin and his desire to provide an answer to these questions, and also an opportunity that it's worth exploring. So I ask you to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We are voting only on the amendment put to council by Councillor Kunze, so we will now vote on the amendment.
Amendment to EN-007-21 has been carried. 6 in favour, 5 against. Those councillors voting against, Councillors Barry, Holland, Ponathurai, Porter and Sabiri.
Thank you, councillors. The amendment now becomes part of the substantive motion. Just wait for governance to catch up. Councillors, a substantive motion is on the screen now, I think. I have Councillor Kunze move the motion. Second was Councillor Holland. Councillor Kunze, I will ask you then if you feel it necessary to speak to the entire motion then, please.
No, I'm good, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Holland, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Nothing further, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak either in favour or against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you. Councillor Sabiri?
Just that I'll be voting against it again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Councillors, will put the matter to the vote.
Substantive motion is amended. EN-007-21 has been carried. 7 in favour, 4 against. Those voting against the motion, Councillors Holland, Ponathurai, Porter and Sabiri.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to EN-008 of 21, loan funding agreement for the Willetton Basketball Association. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Councillor Sweeney, I'll just ask you again, if you don't mind, you have a disclosure you'd like to read to the council. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I am a member of the club and I am declaring a conflict of interest, so I will leave the room.
You're declaring a financial interest, is that what you're declaring?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sweeney, you'll be moving the room. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Spencer Teo is the Councillor Ponaturai is the seconder. I'll just wait till Councillor Sweeney has left the room. Oh, good point. Can I just check? They're not on? No, the speakers are not on. Sorry? Oh, okay. All right. That's probably a good thing. Thank you, councillors. The recommendation is on the screen in front of you. The recommendation is also on page 127 of tonight's agenda. We have Councillor Spencer Teo as the mover and Councillor Ponaturai as the seconder. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm a strong supporter of assisting community groups with loan funding when and if it's required. I believe the city should provide this kind of support to clubs and associations located within the city, especially when the loans attribute to the improvement of city assets, which in this case and the other one before us last month certainly do. I've looked back at the history and I've picked Director Bowe's memory, and there's no doubt this loan agreement was offered to the Willetton Basketball Association at the time this exciting stadium extension was first talked about. But as one would expect, like any commitment like this, it was offered on an if-needed basis. Unfortunately, we don't have a policy on the provision of any kind of loan funding arrangements, and therefore we have to make our decisions on an ad hoc basis. But we must continue to be consistent and assess each application on its merits. Therefore, I'm going to make my decision based on precedents of the officer's recommendation and the need for such a loan. Therefore, I'd like to move a minor amendment, if that's possible, to reduce the term of the loan from 10 years to 1 year.
Councillor Spencer Teo, so you've spoken on the matter. You now wish to actually make an amendment. You wish to move an amendment which would be, let me see, from 10 years to 1 year.
That's correct.
I will accept that as a minor amendment, but Councillor Ponaturai would need to accept that. Councillor Ponaturai? No, no.
Loan from 10 year to 1 year, I'm not...
It actually substantially changes the intent of the motion, so you can certainly move your amendment, but it will not be a minor amendment.
Okay.
So it'll need to be seconded by somebody here, and then we will obviously speak on that matter. Deputy Mayor, are you seconding?
No, I just wanted to clarify. Can the councillor tell me her thinking, or we just have to...
We would have to wait until we can't. That will be part of the debate. So what we'll do is we can talk about that matter once it's actually opened for debate. So if we get a seconder on the amendment, then obviously it can be amended again. We can, if needed to, or we'll see how that actually how it actually works. Councillor Holland.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. This is a major thing here. Are you sure it's not negation?
No, it doesn't have a completely different intent. It's still a loan facility.
Yeah, but it's a
just
huge
on a different
difference
term.
of intent.
No, if the amendment was to completely change it, so instead of a loan facility there is no facility or a completely different facility, this is simply changing one aspect, which is the loan term.
Okay, you're ruling.
So,
thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please, for the amendment? Councillor Kunze will be the seconder, and this is just for the amendment. So the amendment, councillors, I'll just ask, is it on the screen? Governance, have you been doing that while I've been talking? Thank you. So the amendment is just to reduce the loan term, which has been proposed by the officers for 10 years to 1 year. Councillor Spencer Teo, it's been seconded by Councillor Kunze. I'll ask you to speak to the amendment, please.
Thank you. The reason why I moved this amendment is it's because it's consistent with what was offered, although not endorsed by Council last month, and in my mind it's an offer of a short-term loan facility, not a long-term facility like the original recommendation suggests. I agree with what some councillors said last month, and that is that the City of Canning is not a bank. I also feel we should not be offering long-term loans, and any loan longer than 3 years should be considered long-term. I also feel that the Willetton Basketball Association has an obligation to prove to us why they need this money sitting in their bank account and not in ours. And I'm really sorry, but I'm not convinced Willetton Basketball Association are in need of these funds long term, and just because it was offered years back, if needed, I remind you, doesn't mean it should just sit in their bank account waiting for a rainy day and earning interest rather than sitting in ours, saving us having to rely on borrowed funds just to pay our bills. I see the Willetton Basketball Association has over $800,000 sitting in their bank account. Their liabilities include this loan. Even if the loan was repaid tomorrow, they would still have over $500,000 in their bank account. Sadly, the city doesn't have that luxury of such liquidity right now. There's no doubt, like many sporting clubs in Canning, the club was affected by COVID with their income being reduced. However, the club was also very fortunate to receive over $400,000 in grant funding, rent abatements and JobKeeper. Their lease is not yet finalised and they haven't been paying the full commercial value of their premises for several years. The city has been incredibly generous, like another item coming before us tonight, and there comes a point in time where we must start to reduce our support role and revert back to an oversight role with our community groups. Therefore, councillors, I hope you can agree that this one-year loan is consistent, it's fair, and in this case, it's incredibly generous. This $250,000 back in our bank account this time next year will improve our anticipated budget deficit and will really help us on our way to financial recovery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kunza.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I seconded it to allow it to go to debate. And I agree I guess the notion with respect to, I guess, the liquidity of the Basketball Association of 10 years is probably excessive. I just don't know with respect to whether one is, I guess, too short. I'm still, I guess, considering how I vote on this one.
Unfortunately, you're in a position where you need to either tell me that you're either speaking for it and or against it, and speak in that manner. So it's up to you well, it's up to anyone to propose an amendment if that's the only issue that you have, but it's up to you to now declare what you intend to do.
Yeah, well, I've, I guess, seconded it, haven't I? All right, I'll let it go to debate.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak either for or against the amendment? Councillor Barry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, I suppose from my perspective, I wasn't going to support the officer's recommendation to start with, and this one makes it just that much more difficult because it's, I mean, some might say it's semantics, because for all intents and purposes, we're saying you've got to pay this back in 1 year, which, once again, for all intents and purposes, is completely against what the officer's recommendation was. I don't think the Willetton Basketball would accept it, but by the same token, if the council hadn't supported the officer's recommendation, the same would apply, and that would mean that the club then in turn would have to go out and find a commercial loan. That would be my understanding. Like I said, I agree with some of the things that Councillor Teo said. I mean, we're offering loans like this, but it says in the report, there was a question I asked at the agenda briefing, they get a $50,000 concession. And just one, I suppose while I'm on my feet, if I could ask, in the 1920 exemptions and concessions, it was, the GRV was 224,500, and in the 2021 it went to 914,000. So I'm just wondering why the GRV went up like nearly 3.5 times, and the sum in 1920 was a concession of $10,000, and now with the change in the GRV, for I'm not quite sure whether it's on the extra land, if there was any, goes to 50,000. That was going to be.
Did you want me to get Director Kane to
yes, please.
comment on that? Director Kane, you able to make a comment on the claims from Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can't give you a specific answer. I didn't say the land revaluation occurred with Landgate at that time. We'd have to look at the reasons applied for the new valuation.
Well, just in response to the question I asked them, my understanding was the GRV went down, not up. I mean, it was on average 13% less than the previous 3 years.
Again, Mr Mayor, I have to take
Through,
notice. I don't
yeah,
know what the specific GRV was applied to each of these parcels in that time.
You
It
can't answer
certainly
the question.
is prior to my time at council.
Continue, Councillor Barry. Microphone, please.
It is what it is. I would have preferred that it to be vote no against it, but I mean, this is probably the next best thing. Thank you.
Can I just ask, because I'm not clear, were you speaking against the amendment or for it? I don't think you really made yourself very clear then, so...
I'll leave it to the vote because I don't think ambivalence comes into it.
Okay, all right. We will move on. Councillor Ponaturai, and then I'll...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we just speaking on the amendment. Do we get to speak again once more on the substantive motion? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we're only
Thank
speaking
you.
to the amendment at the moment.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
really what we're speaking about is I guess the
10 to 1 year, yeah. Okay. Amanda Spencer to your Councillor Spencer to your mention about that we have to be consistent in making decision in the sports clubs. Yes, we are all, some of us are being, having kids and who have played in the local clubs, and we have the experience. I would like to note that we are not comparing an apple to apple here. We are comparing almost an apple to a jackfruit or something like a gigantic. So the last month we spoke about a club, which is after we asked the numbers, then we had 245 members coming up. This club has 4,500 members. So this is it's a club it's a well established and well served club, and it does not service just one basketball event at all or coaching. It has got number of other multi-sports happening in the Willetton Basketball Stadium. So it can be badminton, Will Ross badminton, or Willetton Senior High School playing 5 days a week, and Ross Point Senior High School playing basketball, badminton, netball,
Councillor,
volleyball.
we just need to speak just to the amendment, which
Yeah,
is just
so
about
that's what I'm just trying to
why
say.
1 year. Yeah.
And also, given that we have actually not negotiated with the management, and we will not be in the position, I know it's our money, so we can make a decision, but making an amendment from 10 years to 1 year is a major change, and I won't be able to support that. And please, I just also want to say that we are not comparing apple to apple, and we are also making a major change from 10 years to 1 year. And then given the fact that we have not discussed that or negotiated with the Willetton Football Club, Willetton Basketball Club Stadium, and I don't think that's appropriate for us to be doing that, because we respect all the clubs and all our constituents in City of Canning. And I'll be waiting to speak a bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunze, you've got a question?
Can I just ask under 915 subsection 1
Of the standing orders?
Of the standing orders, whether the mover would be open to changing it to 3 years?
Yes, I would be.
So you're proposing a minor amendment to the amendment, is that what you're saying? I don't see any issue with that. I mean, that would be a minor amendment if that is an issue here. The issue that I have is I think what we need to do is actually deal with what we have in front of us. Councillor Ponaturai has just spoken on the basis that she believed we were proposing 1 year, and she was obviously fervently against that. I think it would be unfair then, after she's already spoken on the amendment, to then change it to 3 years. So perhaps what we do is we deal with this. If you wanted to then... Councillor Kunze?
Can I just clarify? I may move that at any time. It's just if there's no objection, but especially given Councillor Ponaturai's...
Just give me the clause again.
So
Mr.
915.1, that the council may, without debate, grant leave for a motion or amendment to be withdrawn or altered by the mover with consent of the seconder, provided there is no objection. And given Councillor Ponaturai's concerns, I would have thought that that further supports my amendment.
Just the point of order, Mr. Mayor. If in the 9.152 it says if a member objects, discussion on either the motion or amendment must continue and no alteration is to occur. Thank you.
So you're saying that you're objecting, Councillor Ponaturai? I can't hear you. You've not got your microphone on.
Yes, because
Okay.
because we just made an amendment
I
1
can make
year.
my ruling.
Not
That's
that I'm
okay. Thank you,
supporting
Councillor
that either.
Ponaturai. Heard you. So we have 915.1. It says exactly what you said, Councillor Kunze, but it does say with the consent of the seconder, provided there is no objection by a member. We have an objection by a member, which then means that the motion or the amendment must continue and no alteration is to occur. fraudulent slip there. So we'll return to debating this 1 year. Then if that is not successful, then it's open to you to actually then amend again to any period that you like, if that's your will. So we will continue. Thank you for your question. And anyone else like to speak? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'll be speaking against the amendment. I think it's too dramatic to put through without any discussion whatsoever with the Willetton Basketball Association. I was one that brought up about the original terms of the agreement, which Councillor Spencer-Teo alluded to tonight by saying that it was agreed to that we would provide a loan, turned it into a loan back then. So we have passed a motion that we turn it into a loan. So back then, so we can't go against that for a start. The term of the loan, yeah, that's up to debate at the moment. I think without discussing it with the Willetton Basketball Association at the moment, to drop it from 10 to 1 is a bridge too far for me. I'm a bit with Councillor Kunza. I wouldn't mind dropping it. My intention would have been 5, but I can't go dropping it down to 1 when we've been in the discussion for so long with them, which Councillor Bowe has stated before. And to do this at the moment...
It's open for you to propose that if that's what you wish.
Well, can't propose it now, but I can propose it.
You can propose it now. I mean, so what actually happened was the reason why that wasn't successful from Councillor Kunza was that somebody actually objected to it. So if you were to propose right now, and you said, listen, exactly what you just said, you propose 5 years, unless somebody objects to it, and as long as Councillor Spencer-Teo agrees to it, well, then it would be accepted.
Well, I'll give that a try, Mr Mayor. I will propose that we change it to a term of 5 years. And if someone rejects it, then we're done.
Councillor Spencer-Teo, would you accept 5 years instead of 10, and we can all move on?
To be honest, I would have been happier with 3, but I will accept 5. Like I said, I'm supportive of community groups, but I just think 10 is way too long.
I love a compromise. Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Is any member wanting to object to that? If not, it needs to be seconded, apparently. The seconder. Sorry, the seconder, which is actually... Sorry?
I support that.
You support it. Thank you very much. Councillor Kunza is supporting it. So we'll accept that. Thank you very much, Councillor Holland, and thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Sabiri, you've got a question?
I just have a question. What happens if we just, in a meeting, just decide suddenly that we want to reduce someone's payback time? What happens there?
If we want to what?
Reduce this loan time from 10 to 5 or 3 or 1, you know, what happens from here? What happens after this? Does this...
Director, how, obviously it's communicated, Director?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is Director Bowe's item, but I'm happy to say yes, we would go back to the Willetton Basketball Association, knowing a deed has not yet been entered into Council, advise them of Council's decision and seek to set new terms conditional on what Council resolved tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Sabiri.
Just another question. Would it be better if we postpone this and ask that the city spoke with Willetton the officers spoke with the Willetton Basketball Club and see if they were happy to have it 5 years instead of 10?
It may be, but you can propose then a deferral. If you would like to do that, it's a procedural motion, so that would be open to you to do that. But I would ask before you do, perhaps just if you don't mind, whether there's any time contingency with this. Is there a reason why this needs to be dealt with tonight?
Mr Bowe's saying no.
Mr Bowe is also shaking his head. Thank you very much, Director Bowe. If that's what you wish to do, Councillor Ponaturo, if you've got a question, I'll take your question. If not, we have to deal with a procedural motion here. So, Councillor Sabiri, are you saying you wish to put a procedural motion to defer the matter?
One more question. Until when can this be extended, I guess? Is there a time frame or next meeting or?
We can put it to the June meeting, which is the next meeting. I'm sure that it can be resolved in a month.
No, too fast. Yeah. So I'd like to move it.
You're moving that motion?
Procedural motion.
Councillor Sabiri is moving a motion, which is a procedural motion under the standing orders to adjourn or defer this matter to the June meeting. for consideration, where council will pick up exactly where we leave off tonight. So I will ask for a seconder, which will be Deputy Mayor Jesse Jacobs, and we will put the matter to the vote. Councillor Holland.
I know you're not allowed to talk to it, so I'm not talking to it. It's a question on the way. How would this be, at the moment it's just a deferral, nothing more. Should it have something like a deferral till we wait until we hear something back, have negotiations or something like that?
I think the
or is that
officers
inherent
here,
in it?
I think the officers here know the intent, which would be to speak to, I might get to Director Bowe rather than...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is if the adjournment procedural motion is passed, then my understanding is that the council wishes for the administration to re-engage with the Willetton Basketball Association and aim to negotiate a lower than 10-year time frame, or at least open negotiations about the time frame of the loan.
Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Were Willetton Basketball Association supposed to be coming tonight to give a deputation?
I don't know anything about it. I certainly wasn't informed. Director Bowe, do you know?
Yeah, they were certainly invited to attend, Mr Mayor.
Okay, they're invited to attend. That's the answer to your question. Councillors, without further debate, we'll put the matter to the vote. This is to defer the matter to the June meeting in 4 weeks' time.
Procedural motion 10.1A to adjourn debate on item EN-00821 to the June OCM has been carried. 9 in favour, 1 against. Councillor Spencer-Teo voting against, and noting Councillor Sweeney is out of the room for the vote.
Thank you. Can we have Councillor Sweeney invited back into the room? Thank you. Councillors, just pause for a moment until Councillor Sweeney joins us. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Sweeney has rejoined the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. We move on to item 7.5. The officer concerned, the responsible officer, being Director Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Canning Community. It's CO 003 of 21. The title of that report is Access and Inclusion Advisory Group Unconfirmed Minutes. Officer's recommendation is on the screen. It also appears on page 133 of tonight's agenda. Just a mover, please, for that item. Mover, thank you, Councillor Bain, for that. And a seconder, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Bain, have you got anything you'd like to?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Spencer-Teo, anything?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Nothing to add. Councillors, let's put this matter to the vote.
Motion CO-00321 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to CO 004 of 21, Canning Community Men's Shed, funding support for lease extension. The recommendation is on the screen and is also on page 147 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that matter? Councillor Ponaturai, and the seconder is Councillor Holland. Councillor Ponaturai.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The men's shed is a very important part of our community and our society, and the President Ian Ross, he's a very active member, and I have actually watched them being active in the society and giving opportunities for men of different ages coming to the men's shed and using the space, which is very important, I think, because the space is given for people with a to get out and even socialize it or make something and even empower them and boost their self-esteem. So we have already, we considered for $25,000 we were giving the last 2 years, and even though we have considered and given the lease on the land. Now it's time for us to be supporting them in the next 2 years, $15,000. Majority of those members are in Canning and they are ratepayers. It's part of their money. And it's how we manage that all ratepayers' money and be sharing to the groups whom they need when they're in need. It is our duty here. So I don't need to speak much about it. I'm sure most of you have been to Menchurch. If you've never visited one, I'm sure Mr. Ian Ross will be very happy to have you over and the work they do. And as I said, they've also created more space for others to come and join in. I've been a visitor a few times, and I urge all of you to support this matter, and we can allocate the $15,000 per annum on our next 2 years budget. And please support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I speak in support of this motion. I think the men's shed, it's been proven how good they are for the community in a lot of respects. It was mentioned before with the deputation and how they actually got it quite a bit decimated by COVID, which was totally outside their control. I think this gives them a bit more security. They've said that they've got some money in the bank now, and they propose to have their situation improve within the 2 years of this so that they can have a way forward, which I think is good. So this is a short-term extension to it, and I think it's a really great thing to do to support this fantastic community initiative that just helps a lot of people. It's not just the people who go to the men's shed that it helps. It's got a far more reaching part of society than just the men that actually go in there. It's a lot more than that. But I'll just leave it at that. I won't go on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's true. Thank you very much. Anyone like to speak against it or needs to speak before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CO-004-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to item 14, motions of which previous notice has been provided, and there are none. Urgent business. We have no urgent business this evening. Confidential matters. Councillors would be aware we have a number of items which are confidential. I will ask for a mover and a seconder, please, that those items being CC 004 of 21, 022 of 21 and 023 of 21 be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.23 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act of 1995. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bain, thank you, and Councillor Holland. Councillor Bain?
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Holland? Nothing? No. Thank you. We'll put it to the vote. I think I called you Councillor Holland. I'm not actually certain. We'll have to rewind the audio.
Councillor Holland, I don't have your vote.
Yes, because it's Holland. Which one is it?
The motion to go behind closed doors for confidential session has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, Council. We'll just adjourn. Councillor Barry, just while we ask members of the public, I'll just read my little preamble, Councillor, and I'll come straight back to you. I thank members of the public for their attendance this evening. I ask they please leave the function room in order for Council to consider the confidential matters listed. Thank you very much to you all. Councillor Barry, you had a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, in the...
Thank you. The time now is still 10:12 p.m. and the meeting has now been reopened to the public. I will shortly read aloud the council decisions for items OC 004 of 21, title being late item appointment of interim chief executive officer, CC 022 of 21, proposed sale of portion of lot 114, Vulcan Road in Canning Vale, and CC 023 of 21, proposed sale of lot 62 in brackets 67 Centre Street in Queen's Park. Is that the first one we have here? Okay. The first matter is in relation to OC 004-21. Council resolved, moved by Mayor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bain, that Council selects option A, being that it appoints Mr Stephen Kane as Interim Chief Executive Officer for an initial period of 6 months, effective from the 26th of June 2021 until the 31st of December 2022, offering an annual remuneration package initially of $340,000 in total, and 2, authorises the Mayor to execute a contract with Mr Stephen Kane for the terms as stated above. Do I need to read through the rest of that? The matter was carried 8-3. Those against being Councillor Barry, Councillor Ponaturai and Councillor Sweeney. We'll now move to the second decision. Oh, just for the record, I think I inadvertently said 2021, and I should have said... I said 2022, did I? Yeah, I'd like to be a step ahead, and it should have been 2021. Apologies for that. We'll make sure that the minutes reflect a true and accurate account of the deliberation of Council. The second item being CCO 22 of 21, the Council decision was moved Deputy Mayor Jacobs, seconded Councillor Holland, that Council 1, in accordance with section 8.53 in brackets 3 of the Local Government Act 1995, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to provide local public notice of the proposed sale of 8,664 square metres of land on lot 114 in brackets 30 Vulcan Road, Canning Vale, to Camco Engineering for the consideration of $1,710,000 and subject to the special conditions and requirements outlined in this report. And 2, subject to there being no objections received to Part 1, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to undertake all necessary actions and sign all documentation to complete the land transaction. Should objections be received, the matter shall be referred back to the next available ordinary council meeting. 3, authorises the allocation of the proceeds of sale to the Town Planning Scheme, number 33, Public Open Space Trust Fund for specific use towards park improvements and or community benefits within the Canning Vale Industrial Estate. That matter was carried 11-0. Thank you. The final matter being CC 023 of 21, the Council decision being moved Councillor Barry, seconded Councillor Holland, that Council, in accordance with section 3.583 of the Local Government Act of 1995, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to provide local public notice of the proposed sale of lot 62 in brackets 67 Centra Street in Queen's Park to CX Transport Proprietary Limited and PDRP Proprietary Limited for the consideration of $800,000 and subject to the special conditions outlined, I think outlined in this report. And 2, subject to there being no objections received in Part 1, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to undertake all necessary actions and sign all documentation to complete the land transaction, full stop. Should objections be received, the matter shall be referred back to the next available ordinary council meeting. And at 3, authorises the allocation of the proceeds of sale to the Land Building and Development Reserve. And that matter was carried 11 in favour, 0 against. Thank you, councillors. In closure at item 17, there being no further business this evening, I now declare the meeting closed, the time being 10:17 p.m, and I'd very much like to thank everyone for their attendance, especially to our staff that stayed so long tonight. Thank you, and for those in the public gallery, thank you.